Welcome to the Parenting with Impact podcast with your hosts Elaine Taylor-Klaus and Diane Dempster, co-creators of ImpactParents.com, an online community, award-winning blog, and service organization helping parents all over the world to raise complex kids become capable, independent adults.
Hi everyone, Elaine and Diane here, and we know that you want your complex kids to grow up to be happy and independent, and yet you're not always sure how or when to help with that.
In this podcast, we'll encourage you to collaborate with all kinds of complex kids and support them in navigating life and learning.
And we'll interview leading experts from around the world, as well as parents in our own community, talking about how training for parents actually helps these complex kids.
We'll talk about the issues we hear parents struggling with all the time and how a coach approach can support and empower your amazing young people.
We won't tell you what to do. We're going to help you figure out how. So let's move on to the next conversation. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another conversation in the Parenting with Impact podcast. Diane and Elaine here today to wax poetic on how to stop fixing and start helping, or how to stop fixing so you can start helping, or I don't know, something in there.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking about back to our origins, Elaine, and like when we first created the avatars, the moms and the dads and the avatars at the beginning. There was this avatar we've had after the fact who was Fix-It Fran. And she was like the last of the first round of the avatars that showed up. And it was this sort of, I'm not sure Fix-It Fran is one of our peeps, right? It's just because she's trying to get everything done and make everything fixed and arrange everything and everything else. And as I reflect on it now, it's not that Fix-It Fran's not part of our community, because I think the reality is that we're all Fix-It Frans sometimes, right? And so it's that sort of whenever, I think about how much we've been talking about dysregulated humans and adults, and it's this sort of when we get off balance, whether it's overwhelm or frustration or fear or whatever it is, it's like we either tend to go to control or we tend to go to avoid. And I think that Fix-It Fran, in a lot of instances, is a human that's like in control mode. I got to fix this. I got to fix this now. I'm the only one that can fix it. At least that's the way that I identify with fixing. How do you identify with fixing, Elaine?
So I love where this is going, right? Because here's what comes up for me, because control is your default, right? When you get dysregulated, you go to control. Right. I go to avoid. Okay. So my relationship with fixing it is a little different, because I'm going to take a more passive approach, or I'm going to wait it out or ride it out and see if it resolves itself, right? And I think about how many times people come to us after years of saying, well, I was hoping it would get better, or I thought they might just grow out of it, or right. And so there's something really important for our community, for not just our community, for all parents. Let's be honest.
Let's face it, everybody, all humans, everybody. Even if you happen to be a human that's not a parent listening.
Right, exactly. Let me finish the thought, though. There's something really important for us to wrestle with about that tendency to fix or make it right or correct or to complete, and how important that message somehow gets to all of us, versus sometimes it's not about fixing it, but it's about learning to deal with what's that thing? It's learning to dance in the rain.
Yeah.
Right. That's a very, very important of life, is not trying to make it all right, but learning how to be with it when it doesn't always feel all right.
Well, so there's two things already, right? So number one is noting that if you notice yourself needing to fix something, that's probably an indication that you're a little off, wobbly, dysregulated, whatever language you want to so pay attention. Wow, that's a signal that I need to take the deep breaths or figure it out. And I think that
only comes up every time we talk to somebody.
Always comes up.
Right.
And the other thing you're pointing to is sometimes it's not about
nothing
fixing,
to fix.
Right. And it's about just being with what is and learning how to navigate in that. And the great thing about that is it teaches our kids skills like resilience and this sort of knowing that life's not supposed to just be great things that happen to us. Life is sometimes great things that happen to us, and sometimes things that are neutral, and some things that are not so great. And so there's an aspect of that is life lesson-y teaching for our kids. Where were you going to go?
Yes. And here's what came up is that there's a lot of it has to do with the story we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
So if the story I tell myself is, so full disclosure, right? Last couple of months, I've been in a really swirly, woe is me, why is this happening kind of place. There's been all this stuff happening in my life that has not been positive, despite all the really fabulous stuff that is in my life. And I was letting myself go down this like rabbit hole spiral of woe is me. And I had a series of events happen last week, 3 days in a row, that reminded me to step back into my mindset and to choose my mindset. And it doesn't even matter what they were, but it was like the universe gave me these gifts of talking to this one person and then talking to another person. And then actually, true story, a cousin of mine's daughter ended up with a picture I get out of nowhere of her with the Dalai Lama. And he's holding her face and she's like reaching out to him. She's 22 years old. And it was pure joy. And it was this reminder that, sure, there's all this stuff happening in the world and there's all this beauty and joy. And it's up to me to decide how I want to dance with it, interpret it, language it, what my mindset is. And I don't mean to be Pollyanna here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds a little Pollyanna, but you're not intending
But we're
that.
at choice. We're
Yeah.
still at choice, right? There is, in every moment of our lives, there is always something beautiful and probably something not so gorgeous happening at the same time.
And even if you're stretching, so some of us in some situations, you can stretch to, let me see the beauty in this. Let me see the opportunity in this. Let me see the
opportunity is the word that really I
right.
wanna,
So
I
let
wanna
me see
hone
the
in
opportunity.
on, but go ahead.
And sometimes, let's face it, guys, we are dealing with some really rough shit.
Stuff.
Can I say that? In our community, right? And so sometimes it's just, I don't want to let this get to me. Right.
Yeah.
That could be as high as we can. This is yucky. And I don't want to let it get to me because I want to be able to, I want to land on the other side, or I want to make sure that I help my kid land on the other side, which the other thing I want to talk a little bit, let's hang on a second.
Well, to that, what you just said is one of my defaults. And I remember this a lot when my kids were younger is I can laugh or I can cry.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this picture of me with my oldest child when they were a year old in front of me in a carrier. They had very, very bad reflux and all this stuff before we knew what was really going on health-wise. And the kid was screaming their head off and I'm laughing my head off.
Yeah.
And to a casual observer, it might look like a really cruel photo. But I keep it framed. It's about a 1 inch, 2 inch in diameter photo. And I keep it framed to remind me to laugh through the hard stuff because I couldn't change it. I couldn't stop it. Right. But energetically, I could choose to be with it differently so that I could be with them in their pain instead of that need to stop it, which wasn't really going to work. It was just going to create a hot mess. Right?
And I think what you're speaking to, and that I'm speaking to as well, is this sort of, you may not have a choice about whether or not there's hard stuff that's going on for you or for your kids, but you do theoretically, and I'm saying this with great compassion, theoretically have some choice in how you're going to respond when those things happen. And so whether it's resilience or whether it's fortitude or whether it's looking for the opportunity or whether it's laughing because there's no way you can be serious in something so crazy going on. There's this aspect of we may not be able to control what's happening to us, and we want to believe that we can control how we respond to it. And I think that's it, being willing to consider that there's more than one way to respond to a really crappy situation if it happens to be going on for you, or rather than taking us back to the beginning, needing to fix something. Maybe there's another approach besides fixing that is warranted in the midst of it. So can we take a break and then come back and talk about something else?
Well, maybe not something else. Can we stick on that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, it's Elaine. And if you like this podcast, you'll love our coach approach. Whether you're a parent looking for support or a professional supporting families, we invite you to download a free guide with 12 key coaching tools at impactparents.com/gift. You can begin using a coach approach to help kids become more independent or improve all of your conversations at work and at home.
That's impactparents.com/gift.
So welcome back, everybody. We're talking about fixing and helping and mindset and choosing how to respond instead of react. And what I was thinking about with what you just said, Diane, was that I do believe that we can't control what happens. We can only control how we respond to what happens, right? I really, truly believe that at my core. And I want to go back to that word opportunity, because I think we are so conditioned in our society to excellence and achievement and hitting the metrics and doing the right thing that we forget to allow for the opportunity in things not going well. For the opportunity. I was being interviewed today on a podcast on Blog Talk Radio on neurodiversity. So one of the things I was talking about was they asked me what's the benefit of this. In this case, it was coaches understanding neurodiversity and neurodivergence. And what I was talking about was how important it is for us to understand the opportunity of resilience, and how they were asking about what are the gifts of people with neurodivergence and neurospicy people. It's like one of the greatest gifts of people with neurospiciness is the capacity to get back up and try again. It's like that resilience that we develop from years of having to navigate obstacles. And I'm not saying that we want it to be hard for us or hard for our kids, but man, it makes for some really interesting adults who can achieve some amazing things and create amazing resources in the world because of the empathy that they've developed and the resilience that they've developed, and in having gone through obstacles as kids or teens or whatever.
And that's not, I wouldn't say that's universal. And what you're describing, though, is knowing that you could create some space for your kids to bump around in life a little bit. Right. It's this sort of, if we're not trying to put pillows around them and make sure that nothing happens that's unwanted, or prevent, I hear parents all the time, is I went through that when I was a kid. I was an adult. I was a kid with ADHD and nobody got me. And I just don't want my kids to go through the same thing that I got. And I think that sometimes there's so much heartbreak that the thing that we haven't really talked about that I want to talk about a little bit is like how we respond as parents when our kids say or do or experience things that are heartbreaking. It's like, how many times when my kids were like this, I think yours were too, Elaine, where they like beating themselves up. I'm such a loser. I can't believe I did that. They're like beating themselves up, or they're really angry about a situation, and we want to flip it. It's, oh no, you're amazing. You're smart. You're this, you're that. Right. And it's just, we discount their experience. Well-meaning, right? We want them to feel better. We don't want them to feel bad. And our solution for making them not feel bad is to try to erase their feelings, frankly. And I think that's part of life, is knowing that not only are yucky things going to happen, but we're going to feel yucky about the yucky things that happen. And that's okay. And that's a life skill.
Well, it's interesting because part of what I've been dealing with that got me to this place that I'm finally pulling out of, and what I'm watching at least one of my kids really going through, is when the world is in a hard place, sometimes it's heartbreaking. And we witness a lot of heartbreak in the world, whether we're looking locally or nationally or globally. And being with that can feel so intolerable, can feel so impossible sometimes, especially for our kids who feel really deeply. And I think for me, who feels really deeply, I've really been struggling with feeling the pain of the world. Do you remember when the tsunami happened all those years ago? And you and I both woke up.
I had a dream.
Tsunami. It was so wild, y'all. We both woke up the next day. We talked to each other, and both of us were like in this state from having almost experienced energetically the heartbreak from across the world. Right. And we really had conversations about how to deal with it and how to navigate it. And I think that dealing with heartbreak is a real part of life, isn't it?
Well, it is. And I think that we don't normalize it, right? It's this sort of, there's a little bit too much. We want everybody to be happy and not, hey, life's a roller coaster. And and the challenge is that our kids have more than the average opportunity to have heartbreak and terrible things. And don't get me wrong, we go through the same thing in our circles as well.
Yeah.
And you're going to get exhausted trying to protect your tribe from experiencing heartbreak. We just are. It's exhausting, as opposed to, okay, there's the heartbreak. How do I want to respond? Right. And
Yeah. And
it's that
and
kind of bracing ourselves versus just being with life.
I'm reminded when we first created Minimize Meltdowns, remember all those years ago, and we were talking about the difference between needing it to stop, right? And understanding that sometimes the meltdown has to run its course and you have to navigate. So there was prevention and then there was management. And I think what we're talking about when it comes to navigating whatever the heartbreak is, whether it's somebody didn't show up for a date or somebody's parent didn't do what they said they were going to do, and navigating co-parenting, or whether it's the heartbreak of the world, whatever it is, it's helping our kids see their resourcefulness and see their capacity to be with hard things without crumbling from it.
And I think that's the thing. That's the common thread. I think in one of the common threads in what we teach is this sort of, we're really talking about life skills here. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You want to get your kid through middle school exams. And what you're really trying to do is to develop a kid who can handle and navigate the bumps and bruises of life as effectively as they can, which might mean sometimes it gets messy.
Okay, so here's what comes up, and this is ready for this, me going into solution mode. But okay, so if what we're saying is that our job as parents, our work here at Impact is in part, at least, helping parents help kids navigate the life skills of navigating heartbreak, right? What are some of the tools that we have that parents can tap into that can help them in those moments?
The first one, I'm going to go back to the very beginning and just the reminder that when heartbreak happens, whether it's us or them, there's going to be dysregulation. And so you need to make sure that you want to start with the nervous system of the family system, right? So you want to make sure that you are focused on your own calm as much as you can. You help your kid focus on their calm so that when you're even going into the toolbox, you're doing it not from a place of, oh my gosh, I got to fix this, but okay, here's the situation. Here's the problem. How are we going to approach it?
So commit to calm.
Commit to calm. Yeah.
Recognize the emotional impact and commit to calm. That's huge. And we're not dismissing it as a little thing. Understand that. But what we're saying is that you got to start there.
Right. Go back and listen to that podcast
okay.
I don't know.
We'll find it. We'll find a link for you in the show notes about calm.
Once you're in calm enough space, and your kid is in calm enough space. And I think that's the second piece of it is it's so often we are like, okay, wait, we can do this. Let's figure this out. Right. And our kids are not ready to even engage in the problem solving. And so we're like a talking head to them and feel like we're doing it all by ourselves. We really do have to wait and invite the collaboration, right? It's just sort of,
before that, we have to acknowledge the experience, the feeling, what's going on for them.
Just
you've got to calm, and then you've got to really acknowledge what's going on. One of my kids had a complete meltdown when they were in town visiting recently about what's going on in the world. And it wasn't like an irrational, it was just this deep feeling. I was watching them with their grandmother, and all of a sudden they're like on the ground holding their grandmother, crying because they were feeling the weight of the world. And so they really needed that feeling to be acknowledged. That was a really hard way for them to feel and to be seen and heard without being dismissed or fixed.
So that takes me to the tool you're describing, Elaine, is ACE. Acknowledge, show compassion, wait, because there's a dash between the C and the E, and then explore. And so acknowledging and showing compassion, validating our kids, validating ourselves is a great de-escalator and gives them space to clear enough of the emotion so that then we move into more of a collaborative environment. And so collaboration is always a great tool. And going back to what I was saying, we want to be invited into collaboration with our kids, particularly when they're older. It's this sort of, we want permission to get involved instead of just swooping in. And so there's that aspect of collaboration with permission.
Yeah. It's like we have that tendency. So if we go back to the original construct of this, right? This is, what do you do how do you stop fixing so that you can start helping? One of the ways you stop fixing is to ask permission to even offer advice or input or to get into the conversation. It's not to force the conversation on them, but to enroll them and to cultivate the trust so that they feel willing to have a conversation with us. And reminder, sometimes it takes a week or more to get into an important conversation. It can take a long time.
And what was coming up as you were saying that, Elaine, because we're talking about help, right? It's just sort of in so many times we were with these kids. We taught this class last week. We were talking about the independence paradox and the fact that these kids need more help than they're ready to ask for or that they think they need. And so part of this, those of you who are not in a crisis mode, like the other tool is normalizing and teaching the life skill of asking for help, right? So we want to go back to, if our kids realize, oh, wait, it's normal for me to need help. It's normal for me to ask mom and dad or whoever is to help me through this problem instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, I got to do this and I got to do this by myself.
Yeah. All right. So that's pretty good. Actually, we did pretty well, I would say. We set the stage. We had no idea what we were going to come up with, but what I just heard is commit to calm, use ACE to really acknowledge their experience, ask permission, and this is true for all ages, and to really, in a larger context, normalize and teach the life skill of asking for help.
And then at that point, what you're able to do is you're able to problem solve, right? It's just sort of thinking about if you're going in to solve a problem versus fixing a situation, just the energy of that difference. To clear away I'm imagining it's just springtime here as we're recording this, and I'm clearing away some stuff around the plants to see what's there underneath it. It's like this sort of, if I just started pulling stuff out of the garden without going, okay, what else is here? The energy of the way we want to approach a situation really does enable us to do it more creatively, more effectively, more collaboratively, right?
Yeah. And sometimes there's not a problem to solve.
Yes.
And so we also want to ask the question, if we slow down and we create a space to acknowledge what the feeling and experience is, we may discover there's some problem solving that's appropriate. And we may discover there's actually nothing to solve here. This is about being with someone in their frustration, pain, discomfort, whatever. And there's a value to that too.
Yeah.
Right?
And or being with someone as they go through a failure situation and holding them through that.
Right.
Not expecting that we have complex kids, not expecting that they're going to just magically learn from their mistakes, because these kids don't learn from their mistakes the same way as their peers sometimes do, but being with them through the process of stumbling and falling and figuring out, where do I go on the other side of this?
Yeah. That was a good conversation. I like that. Well done, Diane.
Always good to talk to you about things.
You too, my friend. All right, everybody. Those of you who are listening, as always, you're tuning into this, which means you're conscious and you're engaged and you're making a difference and you want to be there for yourselves and for your kids. And we really honor that and acknowledge that. And I guess the question is, what are you taking away from this conversation? What's the insight for you that will help you take this and move this forward with you into your life?
And as we close, thank you for being here. Thank you, Elaine, for your time and your presence. And thank you, everybody, for what you're doing for yourself and for your kids. At the end of the day, you make the difference.
Take care, everybody.
You've been listening to the Parenting with Impact podcast with Elaine and Diane. For more information on the Impact Parents community or to join Sanity School for Parents, please visit impactparents.com. If you like what you've heard, please share this podcast with friends who need similar guidance and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For the essentials of Elaine and Diane's coach approach to parenting, download a free tip sheet at impactparents.com/podcast.
Behavior therapy training for parents is actually recommended as a first-line treatment for complex kids. For information about Sanity School, our training program for parents or teachers, which has helped thousands of families around the globe, visit impactparents.com/sanityschool.